Hi everyone, my name is Joseph and today I want to discuss a HBO show by the name of Succession, which first aired on June 3rd, 2018 and it finished airing May 28th, 2023. So not too long ago, it was just a year ago, not too long ago, just within the last week, since right now I'm recording this on June 2nd, so we just passed the year anniversary of the conclusion of Succession. So I started watching the show after it completely finished. I did hear about the show when it was airing. I heard how everyone talked about how it's a very great drama, the best drama since Game of Thrones. I know there's multiple opinions about that, but when we say Game of Thrones, we're obviously going from the first 4-5 seasons, and for some maybe a little bit more beyond that. I finally decided to start watching Succession because I figured I heard so much great things about it. Why not just take the gambit? And if I enjoy it, then I enjoy it. If I don't enjoy it, then, well, I didn't enjoy it. And I'm happy to say that after watching the first couple, not even the first couple episodes, in the first episode, I very much was finding myself entertained by the show. So right off the bat, what is Succession about? Succession is about a family who are billionaires, and they're also in control of a media corporation by the name of Raystar Roco. And I would argue, some might say that I think superficially it might seem like the show is about the family, but I argue it's actually about the family business instead. Whenever this perspective of the show is always coming from, yes, the family that's in control of the business, but we never get personal information about this family. We're always getting personal information about this family in regards to the company. So there's always some connection to the company itself. And by the time the show ends, without any spoilers, without stating anything specifically, I'd argue that the show ends by giving us the conclusion of this company rather than the conclusion of these characters. Yes, we do find out what happened to these characters, but the focal point was never about them. It was always about the family business specifically itself. So if one's concerned that they wouldn't enjoy the show because, again, it's about billionaires, they might feel like they can't connect with the characters. I'm happy to say that while it might be true if you're not rich or affluent yourself, I don't consider myself to be affluent. I did grow up working class. According to today's sociological standards, I'm still considered to be working class. So I'm not affluent, nor am I privileged. But with that being said, I was still able to enjoy the show because these characters, despite all their privilege and affluence, we get to see how they struggle what to do with that affluence. With the eldest son, Connor, I would argue that he's the most healthy because he makes the choice to stay away from the family company. And despite staying away from the family company, we're also showing that he's very much dependent on his father and on that company's money as well. The only reason why Connor is able to live his life is because of his obvious familial connection to his father. The next eldest son, Kendall, we also get to see how that son, again, although affluent and privileged, he really can't start his own business because he lacks that common business sense, that CEO experience to properly start one's own business and to lead it to something grander than how it began. Kendall wants to take over the company that his dad started, and that's awesome, that's great and everything. But again, it's a company that his dad began, not Kendall. Shiv, I believe she might be the youngest. I was never sure about that, so I'll say the next quote-unquote youngest. I believe that would be Romulus, or Roman, as his nickname is. We're showing that he's essentially just a playboy individual. Again, despite his affluence and privilege, he doesn't know how to act like a proper adult. He's very much pretends like he's tough, but when push comes to shove, Romulus is very much, I hate to say it, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but he's a pushover. He does his best to stand up for himself and for what he believes in, but when push comes to shove, he's willing to back down and change his perspective, even if he maybe doesn't truly believe that other perspective, or if he believes his original stance, but he's just really quickly able to relinquish that in order to move forward. And then after that, we have Shiban, or Shiv, as the family members call her. And again, despite her affluence and privilege, the audience gets to see how she struggles to make a name for herself, even when she branches away from the family business. The show begins with her working on politics, but I argue that the show shows that the only reason why she's able to work in family politics is because of her connections to the family and race star Rocco. Essentially, those politicians, they want to work with her because of the dirt and the not the scandals, but just the insider information that Shiv provides as an individual who has personal connections to this company. So I really like how the show does a great job about this. One is always constantly having two mindsets. Essentially, you're having to walk a tightrope between the combination of two mindsets. That first mindset being of looking at the family as just affluent, but also looking at the family as just human beings, just individuals who happen to be privileged and affluent. There's other characters in the show, like, for example, Stewie. When I first started watching the show, I did not like his character. I thought, again, he would be arrogant due to his privilege and affluence. I'm happy to say that by the time the show ends, he ended up being my favorite character, mostly being because he was always the most honest. He never, at least to my perspective, maybe that might change when I rewatch it again, he was always honest, and he never backstabbed anybody. As long as one paid attention to what he was stating verbally, one could deduce what Stewie wanted to do. And I really did appreciate that, especially because in this world of billionaires, I would argue that there's always going to be some people who, when they state something, well, they're not really, what they say is not what they actually mean, right? I don't think that's true with Stewie. I don't very much like that. Minor spoilers, in the last season, the show comes to a head with the family, not the family, but the board of trustees, or just the board of the race star Rocco, having to vote to see who keeps the company out of the Roy children, Logan's kids, or passing it off, selling it to another billionaire by the name of Lucas Madison. I love how when it comes to Stewie's vote, he just looks at Kindle and he goes, "Team Kindle, baby," and he like winks or something like that. "Team Kindle, baby." Stewie was a great character. I really did enjoy him. Anywho, but so despite this show being filled with rich individuals, don't let that stop you from enjoying the show. Again, this show does a great job of presenting these characters as humans who just so happen to be affluent. My favorite character throughout the show was Logan. I know that he was a horrible and a bad father, and the fact that his children are not able to succeed without him, I think, really demonstrates this. The fact that the healthiest son is, I would argue, not healthy, just healthy in regards to the rest of his siblings. But Connor, I would argue that Connor was the most well-to-do, the most adjusted. Yeah, compared to normal standards, he's still quite effed up, unfortunately, because of Logan's way of parenting, way of being a father, a dad. But despite that, I just did appreciate Logan's character because I just liked his no business attitude. Essentially, he just always wanted to get the job done, and then move forward from there. I love how in the last season we being the audience, got to see a more pleasurable, friendly side of Logan via a video. And for me, that really goes to demonstrate, and I love how within that video we have Connor's character and none of the other siblings. And for me, that really goes to show how Logan had the closest relationship with Connor. Despite me saying the closest, it still wasn't close. It needed to be closer. But for Logan, he is, I would argue, that the sibling that he loved the most as a son, not an heir to his business, but as an actual child who happened to be the son, would be Connor. The reason why I say that is because if one watches that video within the last season, the last episode, they see how Connor is able to joke around, not just with his dad, but also with his dad's work friends, and dare I say friends, since Logan kept work and his personal life so closely intertwined. I would argue that his work friends were his friends. But we never saw that demeanor from Logan when it came with his other children, and I would argue that's because his other children reflects how they were not the right fit for this company. Actually, Romulus in the last episode even states himself that, quote unquote, we are bullshit. He recognizes and acknowledges that essentially the only reason why Romulus, Rome, Shiv, and Kindle are in this business building and the Waystar Roco board of CEOs or board of trustees, excuse me, is because of their connections as children, is because of their last name. And the show, it's not a major aspect of the show, but the show does make commentary about that from here and there. And whenever it does, it's always a lot of fun and very insightful as well. So would I recommend this show? I really would, yes. One has HBO. You haven't seen Succession. It's a great show with interesting characters. I'm not going to say they're great characters because they're far from being great. They're very much hurtful, selfish, and they can't be manipulative and confining. God, I can't pronounce words sometimes. Manipulative, you guys know what I'm trying to say as well. Like, for example, at the last season, the siblings decide to start working together as a team. But soon after that, they start working behind their they start working behind their backs, not their bats. So that's what makes the show so fun. It's a bit like Downton Abbey, except while Downton Abbey was quite happy and positive, Succession is the opposite of that. Not negative, but just showing sometimes that positivity that some are portraying, it's manufactured. It's not sincere positivity. I really did enjoy this show. I'm definitely planning to rewatch it. Maybe not this year, but probably within the next 2 to 3 years, I could see myself rewatching it. It was only 4 seasons. And maybe in the future I'll do reviews for individual seasons. I personally feel like the first 2 seasons are definitely the better seasons. Season 3 was still entertaining. It was still well written, but I argue that the overall plot doesn't really move forward. Where season 2 ends, season 3 kind of maintains that status quo, and we being the audience, we don't really pick up the progression of that story of that status quo into season 4. I've been kind of vague on purpose in case anyone wants to watch the show, but obviously it is in regards to the company itself. If you have seen the show, I'd love to ask you guys, who are your favorite characters? If you had any favorite characters. Oh wait, I'm almost finishing, but I'm going ahead of myself. This is why I wanted to do individual reviews for the season. This is just a video about the show as a whole. That's why I'm not really going into specific characters. But with that being said, there is one character I want to get into, another family member of the Roys. That would be cousin Greg. So Greg, I believe his last name is Hirsch in the show, Greg Hirsch. He's a character that I would argue is meant to be the stand-in for the audience. For us, the audience, I'm going to assume most of us are not billionaires nor millionaires, nor do we have access to that upper class aristocrat slash new money world. So we get to see and experience that world through Greg's character. Any questions that Greg has, those are questions that more than likely the audience has as well. And so when Greg asks those questions, it's meant to give us information to help situate not just Greg's character, but also the audience. But the show does a really good job of demonstrating how Greg, he ends up adapting to this Roe environment that he's in. And he's very much different from the first season. In the first season, I would argue he's incompetent, and a bit of a bubbling fool. And by the end of the show, I always do argue that he's incompetent. The only thing that he's learned how to do is to manipulate people and use information to get what he wants. But beyond that, he's still incompetent. I would argue that most of his coworkers are going to be much more competent compared towards him due to the fact that they more than likely actually have their degrees and education. While as Greg, he's only getting by because of nepotism. He's much more arrogant by the end of the show. And dare I say, while Stewie, when the show first began, I did not like Stewie. By the end, I was definitely Team Stewie. At the beginning, I was more, maybe I wasn't completely on board with Greg, but I was more sympathetic towards him. I wouldn't say I was Team Greg, but I was able to understand Greg's perspective. But by the end of the show, I was definitely not Team Greg. In fact, I was anti-Team Greg. If possible, I was like, Tom, another character in the show, reduce Greg's pay. $200K just for being the nephew of Logan? No, I don't think so. So, I just wanted to state that because Greg's character, I think the show did a good job of allowing Greg to be a stand-in for the audience, but then also making him evolve to become his own character. That the audience, where at first we were able to side with Greg, but now if we wanted to, we could go, you know what, Greg? Screw you. No, I'm joking, but anywho, And then the last thing I'm gonna say, so as I already stated, my favorite character was Logan. I was Team Logan up into his, so spoilers, up into his death in season 4. So one might be curious, who did I support after Logan? So if I was Team Logan, that doesn't mean that I was against the other kids. Some time to time, if one watches the show, they'll know what I'm referring to. But after Logan's death, I very much did become Team Kindle. The reason being because despite, I do believe what Romulus stated, that they're bullshit, the kids are bullshit. But despite that BS, from all the siblings, it was only Kindle who was always in the Raystar Roco. Yeah, he wasn't the best at being a CEO, and I don't think he would have been very productive as Raystar Roco's CEO. But if anyone had in my opinion, if anyone had the opportunity to run as CEO, it should have been Kindle. Romulus wasn't even part of the company when the show begins. He got brought back into the company. And then Shiv, she was politicking. She was working in the world of politics rather than helping her dad run the business. And then Connor, he was just completely removed from the business altogether, and he was doing his own thing. So again, that's why I would say if anyone deserved the chance to run the business after Logan's death, I would argue it should have been Kindle. But with that being said, I do acknowledge that Kindle would not have been a good fit as CEO. I'm only Team Kindle because if I'm forced to choose, Logan's gone. So the next one that I would want to support would be the one who actually showed some determination of actually running the company, even if they weren't the best at it, right? We must forget with season 1, the first episode, what does Kindle do? He ends up having to increase the amount of money he's offering to Valtor, a company that he's trying to acquire, not just for himself, but for his dad and ATN, the family business, Raystar / Roco. So would I recommend the show? Again, yes, I really would. If you've seen the show, I'd love to ask you guys, who are your favorite characters? Who were you supporting up into the end? Were you like me, were you supporting one character, but then once that character has been removed, you need to put the hat onto another character? And so for me, that was Logan to Kindle. Or were you always supporting one of the siblings from the get-go and you were always anti-Logan? As always, I do appreciate you guys watching. Have a great day and take care. Oh no, I always do my best to maintain a theme. I always forget to take that down. Sometimes, not always, but I have a tendency to forget to take that down for videos about Digimon. Again, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.